I've been in the fantasy business ever since I put on my first Speedo and walked down the runway. We're all in the fantasy business one way or another, and it's our job to help bring that fantasy to life for ourselves as well as for someone else. The fantasy of the perfect home. The fantasy of the perfect car. The fantasy of the perfect clothes. Problem is, nothing's perfect. Not even the perfect fantasy. Because in order to have a perfect fantasy, you have to have a perfect person. And last time I checked, there's no such thing as a perfect person. So then how can the fantasy be perfect? And that's where the reality kicks in. How do you get your imperfect reality to cooperate with your perfect fantasy? For me, it all started when I got inspired to get off my mom's couch to go live life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness with entertainment pleasure. I started chasing the dream, or the perfect fantasy, I guess you could call it. I didn't know it was a perfect fantasy at the time. I started working with these women, the kind of women that I guess you might consider to be the perfect fantasy. But that's when I discovered the imperfect reality. We're living this imperfect reality that comes in conflict with our perfect fantasy. And so then we spend our lives hooked on achieving the perfect fantasy. So then we become in the business of fantasy. Does your reality live up to the fantasy? The perfect fantasy? To be continued.